Alan Mendelsohn, The Boy from Mars by Daniel Pinkwater. Chapters 41, 42, and 43. Chapter 41. As we walked through the forest, I wondered if maybe Alan Mendelsohn wasn't really seriously crazy. It took us half an hour to get to the city of Lenny. Then it was going to take at least that long for the Wakawakians to get there with their torches. I still didn't know what the torches were for. Maybe Alan Mendelsohn was planning to burn down the city. That meant that we'd be alone in the city of Lenny with Manny, Mo, and Jack, the Nafsulian bad guys, and their terrible beast for at least a half hour after the electric horn was sounded. This didn't make me feel too comfortable, especially since I didn't know what Alan Mendelsohn's plan was, and he apparently wasn't going to take the time to tell me. Alan Mendelsohn had a little map Ralsop had sketched for him, and he was constantly checking it and looking for landmarks as we made our way cross-country toward the city of Lenny. He didn't seem to be interested in talking as we walked. The city of Lenny was pretty impressive. Just as Lance Hergerschleimer had described it, it looked like a mountain made of buildings. There was a highway leading up to a gate, and after that, an incredibly long and wide flight of steps leading up to a big building that looked a little like the Hogborough Museum. Alan Mendelsohn and I stepped onto the road and walked up to the gate.
Who goes there? Who trespasses on the city of Manny, Mo, and Jack?
A voice boomed. Pay no attention, Alan Mendelsohn said. It's a recording. Ralsop told me about it.
Halt! Interlopers!
The voice was even louder. Still a recording, Alan Mendelsohn said. Don't worry about it. We started climbing up the steps.
Beware! This is your last warning!
The voice was really loud. Pay no attention and keep climbing, Alan Mendelsohn said. It's just a mechanical burglar alarm to alert Manny, Mo, and Jack that someone is coming. Ahead and above us, I could see the doors of the big building slowly opening. I couldn't see any people.
Prepare to die!
The voice said, louder yet. Don't worry, Alan Mendelsohn said. They're just trying to scare us. Well, it's working, I said. Look, Alan Mendelsohn said, pointing. Manny, Mo, and Jack. 3 little men appeared. None of them could have been taller than 5 feet. They all had thick horn-rimmed eyeglasses, and they were wearing plaid sport jackets. Except for their greenish color, they could have been anybody. They didn't look pleasant, but they didn't look especially scary.
Who dares?
One of them shouted in a thin, squeaky voice. He cupped his hand in front of his straw snap-brim hat so he could see us. The sun was behind us.
To violate!
Another of the 3 Nafsulians squeaked.
The sacred city of Manny, Mo, and Jack!
The third said. Alan Mendelsohn's reply surprised me. We are emissaries of the Martian High Commissioner Ralsop, here to discuss matters concerning the Zitzkisberry trade.
Oh, wait a minute,
said one of the Nafsulians. They went into a huddle.
You may approach,
they said.
But no tricks, or we will send our pet out to deal with you.
We approached. We have been sent to find out, Alan Mendelsohn said as we got near the top step, why you are charging us 12 Martian Klatchniks per Zitzkisberry, while the People's Zitzkisberry Collective of Waka Waka is able to offer them for 3 Martian Klatchniks apiece.
What?
Manny, Mo, and Jack shouted.
What's that you say? 3 Klatchniks? That's impossible. Unless the Wakawakians have a secret store of Zitzkis berries, unless they've been saving Zitzkis berries out of the generous free gifts of Zitzkis berries we present to them. Treachery! The ingrates are trying to undermine our enterprise. Sound the alarm!
One of the Nafsulian pirates ran inside the big building and apparently threw a switch, because the loudest electric horn I ever heard began to sound. It worked, Alan Mendelsohn whispered to me. By this time we were already at the top of the stairs. The three Nafsulians had brought out chairs and set them in a circle on the wide, flat place in front of the building. There was also a little table with cups of Fleege. Ugh, I thought to myself.
I am Manny,
one of the Nafsulians said.
And this is Mo, and this is Jack. Kindly sit down and have a cup of Fleege with us. A large portion of the Wakawakian populace will soon be here, and this misunderstanding will be cleared up. I'm afraid the reason you were offered those Zitskis berries at such an unconventional price is that they are, or were, purloined Zitskis berries. The ones who offered them to you had no right to do so. We control all Zitskis berries in Waka Waka and the universe, and we set the price. It will all be cleared up in a very short time.
We sat through our second Fleege ritual of the day. This one was more interesting because at least we had the green Nafsulians to look at. It was also fortunate that the pirates had adopted the Waka Waka Fleege ritual, because it meant a half hour during which we wouldn't have to answer any questions. I was afraid they would ask me something about the 12th existential plane on Mars. As it was, the Fleege ritual didn't last long enough. The Nafsulian pirates came out of their aesthetic trance before anyone from the forest had arrived with a flaming torch. Manny, Mo, and Jack didn't come out of their period of Fleege contemplation all fuzzy-headed and peaceful like the Wakawakians. They seemed sort of sharp and suspicious.
How is it that our usual contacts, Doldup and Weezup, weren't sent with this message?
Mo wanted to know. Doldup and Weezup are on vacation, Alan Mendelsohn said.
That's odd, Jack said. I've never heard of a Martian official taking a vacation. I can see that you're a Martian, Manny said to Alan Mendelsohn. But your colleague, I didn't catch the name.
Leonard, I blurted out.
Leonard?
Manny said.
That's not a very Martian-sounding name. He doesn't look like any Martian I've ever seen.
He's from the 7th existential plane, Alan Mendelsohn said. He's just with our department temporarily, sort of an exchange program.
People from the 7th existential plane on Mars ought to have gills, Manny said, since everything there is underwater.
Look, Alan Mendelsohn shouted, and pointed to a column of smoke rising near the gate to the city. Chapter 42.
What's that?
Said Manny.
It's the Wakawakian peasants bearing torches, said Mo. Why are they carrying torches? Asked Jack. Who cares? Manny said. It's probably some weak trick of theirs to distract us so we won't ask them who's been stealing our Zitskis berries. They can't do any harm with those torches. The city is made entirely of stone.
The Waka Waka populace was arriving in large groups and gathering on the wide steps of the Palace of Culture. Each Waka Wakian carried a burning, smoking torch. When all the Waka Wakians had gathered on the steps, the three Nafsulians addressed them.
Miserable citizens of Waka Waka, they began. It has come to our attention that some of you have been offering our Zitskis berries to our Martian neighbors at a reduced price. We want the ringleaders. We will give 5 Zitskis berries to anyone who comes forward with information.
Phooey! Someone in the crowd shouted.
Banana oil!
Shouted another. Your grandmother's mustache! Someone else said. The Waka Wakians weren't particularly original in their insults, but they were showing a lot of courage. I felt sort of proud of them.
We will not waste any more time, the Nafsulian said. We have important Martian guests to attend to.
It was Mo who said this. I was glad they hadn't figured out that we were fakes. They were so excited by our story of Zitzkis berries being sold without their knowledge that they didn't even try to find out if it was true or not. Alan Mendelsohn told me later that this is called the big lie technique. You start off with a whopper and try to spring it on your victim all of a sudden, and he'll be too excited to do much thinking. It's like this. Someone rushes in and shouts, "Your grandmother's house is on fire! Come and save her!" You might be 6 blocks away when you realize that your grandmother lives in a mobile home in Nefesh Park, Florida. The Nafsulians were just too greedy to stop and think when someone told them that their stolen Zitzkis berries were being stolen from them. They just reacted.
If someone doesn't talk right now, we'll just go inside and send out our little pet. He'll take care of you, if you know what we mean.
The Nafsulians all laughed nasty laughs. This was going to be the test of the Waka Wakian courage. I knew that Alan Mendelsohn had passed the word not to run away, even if the unfathomable evilness was sent for. But I also knew that the Waka Wakians were deathly afraid of the monster and usually ran the moment the Nafsulians threatened them with it. There was a wave of terror that went through the crowd. It was noticeable, but nobody ran. They all wanted to run. You could feel that too.
Anybody feel like talking?
The pirate said. Nobody made a sound or said a word. They just stood there holding their torches.
All right, you've brought this on yourselves, the Nafsulian said. And, just for fun, we've pushed the button that electrically locks the city gate. This time, you can't run away from our pet.
There were some whimpers of fear from the crowd. It's one thing to make up your mind not to run away from a dreadful monster. It's something else entirely to find out you have no choice in the matter.
Last chance,
the Nafsulians said. The 3 Nafsulian bandits went inside the doors of the Palace of Culture. There were a few scattered screams from the crowd. I had been feeling so sorry for the frightened Waka Wakians that I forgot all about the fact that I was standing not 20 feet from the door out of which the intolerable abomination was going to appear any moment. All of a sudden I remembered that. I also realized that I was so scared and excited that I probably wasn't going to be able to go into State 26 if things went wrong. There were maybe 5 terrible seconds. The Waka Wakians' torches wavered. The thick, choking black smoke made the whole city seem as dim as the forest. My heart was pounding. Then something appeared in the doorway. The Wazzle. I felt sick and scared. It was as big as 3 men. 3 little men. Wait a minute. The Wazzle was supposed to be invisible, and yet I could see something. In the dim light caused by the smoke from the torches, I could see that the Wazzle, the invisible terror, was actually Manny, Mo, and Jack, the 3 Nafsulian bandits. They were the Wazzle. The Waka Wakian populace caught on just a few seconds after I did. First there was some giggling, then some loud laughter, then a deafening roar. Manny, Mo, and Jack looked confused. 20,000 Waka Wakians, who were supposed to be scared silly, were pointing at them and laughing. "Now," Alan Mendelsohn whispered in my ear, "while they're still confused, let's command them to surrender." I went into State 26 with Alan Mendelsohn, and we commanded the 3 Nafsulians to remove and replace their little straw hats continuously while rubbing their bellies with a circular motion, the old Klugarsh mind control trick. It worked. The Nafsulians gradually became more visible, looking at each other with amazed expressions as they continued to rub their bellies and remove their hats in the classic Nafsulian gesture of complete surrender. The crowd was cheering, "They've surrendered! They've surrendered!" Then the crowd began to call for the Martian High Commissioner. "Rolls up! Rolls up!" they shouted. People stepped to the side to make a little path through the crowd, and up the steps came a very dignified-looking man. He was wearing a sort of green and white sweater and black and white shoes with plaid socks. "I am Rolls Up, High Commissioner of the 12th Existential Plane on Mars," the dignified man in the sweater said. "I am here to officially acknowledge that you have made the ultimate gesture of surrender, which no Nafsulian can ever retract, and to offer, as the representative of a neutral government, to provide you with safe conduct and make sure you get home." The Nafsulians looked as though they were afraid of Ralza. "We'll be starting out for the Nafsulian plane of existence almost at once," he said. And then he said to us, "I'd start out for home without hesitating, if I were you. I don't think you can stay here safely for much more than an hour, and you don't want to get stuck in Waka Waka." Then he waved to the cheering crowd of Waka Wakians, and he and the 3 Nafsulians faded and vanished before our eyes. Lance Hergesheimer rushed up to us. "You boys are great Waka Wakian heroes," he said. "We want to honor you and also celebrate our return to complete liberty with an all-night Fleege ceremony beginning in 1 hour. There was a wild cheering from the crowd. You couldn't hear yourself think. Alan Mendelsohn and I went into State 26 and tuned ourselves back to Hogborough. Chapter 43. We were across the street from Bat Masterson Junior High School. Although we had tuned ourselves as far as we could back to the Hogborough plane, we could still hear the faint cheering of the Waka Wakian crowd. "We're not entirely here," I said. "No, we're not," Alan Mendelsohn said. "We have to get to Hergesheimer's Oriental Gardens in under an hour, or we're going to wind up stuck between Waka Waka and whatever plane Hogborough exists in, or worse." "You mean if we don't go to Hergesheimer's Oriental Gardens, tune ourselves to Waka Waka, then tune ourselves back to Hogborough, we might wind up sort of fading into Waka Waka and staying there?" "It's a possibility," Alan Mendelsohn said. "Well, let's go," I said. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life drinking Fleegix." It was a long walk to Hergesheimer's Oriental Gardens. We could just do it in under an hour if we went fast the whole way and didn't stop. Of course, we weren't sure if an hour was all we had. It was just an educated guess of Ralzup's, but we didn't feel like taking any chances. We started walking and went as fast as we could, not talking, sweating. When we arrived at Noel Wallaby's junkyard, he had gone home. The gate was locked. There was barbed wire at the top of the fence. Fafner was there, but he didn't seem so old and harmless as before. Also, he didn't seem to recognize us. I had the feeling that he'd bite us with as many teeth as he had if we got inside the fence. "Without getting inside the junkyard, there's no way to get into Hergesheimer's Oriental Gardens," I said. "I know," Alan Mendelsohn said. "I'm trying to think." He was all out of breath from the fast walk. "We're wasting valuable time," I said. I know," Alan Mendelsohn said. "There's a way to get in there, but I can't think of it." "Wait a minute," I shouted. "I've got it. We tune ourselves to Waka Waka here and walk right into the gardens and then tune ourselves back to Hogborough." "That's it," Alan Mendelsohn said. "I don't know why I couldn't think of it. I'm tired, I guess." We went into State 26, tuned out of Hogborough and into Waka Waka, and walked into the gardens. We had to pick our way along the paths. It was pretty nearly dark, but we found our way to the little lake where we had first made contact with the Waka Waka plane of existence. We sat down in the same spot and went into State 26. Something was wrong. "This isn't working," I said. I know. Try again," Alan Mendelsohn said. We weren't quite making contact. We'd get almost all the way into the Hogborough plane, but not quite. There would still be a little contact with Waka Waka left. "It's too late," I said. I was starting to get really scared. We have to keep trying, Alan Mendelsohn said. We tried again and again. Each time we nearly made it, but not quite. We're stuck, I said. We can't be, Alan Mendelsohn said. We must be doing something wrong. Look, let's do it once more, but this time don't try. Just do it. Like the time we made the Omega meter play Jingle Bells. It worked. We got through. We both knew that we were in Hogborough 100%. We collapsed on the ground. Now we face the problem of getting out of Noel Wallaby's junkyard, Alan Mendelsohn said. That's right, I said. I hadn't thought of that. We might wind up locked in here for the whole weekend. Somehow that didn't worry me so much now that we had escaped from Waka Waka and were securely back in good old Hogborough. Of course, the problem is different when viewed from the inside, Alan Mendelsohn said. When we were out there, we just had our bodies. Inside, there are tools, ladders, and everything we need. The only question is, will Fafner be friendly or not? It turned out that Fafner was only programmed to act fierce if you approached the junkyard from the street side. He was not very interested in us at all when we approached from the tangle of foliage that marked the edge of what was left, in our plane, of Hergesheimer's Oriental Gardens. In Noel Wallaby's shack we found a big rusty pair of pliers, and there were lots of old ladders. It was perfectly easy to break out of the junkyard. We didn't cut the barbed wire, just unhooked it at one point, and we used 2 ladders, one on each side of the fence. When we were over, Alan Mendelsohn repaired the barbed wire, and we sort of slid the second ladder back into the junkyard so nobody else would be able to break in. We were both late for supper, and so tired on the way back from Noel Wallaby's junkyard that we didn't say a word to one another. Alan, tomorrow I want to ask you a whole bunch of questions, I said. Okay, tomorrow, he said, as he dropped me off at my house. So ends chapter 33, Alan Mendelsohn, The Boy from Mars.